Hello, it's John Small again, and this is more on the United States Christian heritage. I'm going to read parts of a speech given by Benjamin Franklin at the Constitutional Convention on June 27th, 1787. I'll just go ahead and give you a little background about Franklin. He was a deist. I know a lot of people will say that all of the founding fathers were deists, and that's not true. There were some deists, but there was like, let's say less than 5% of the founding fathers were deists. About maybe 1 or 2. The rest were professing Christians, and Franklin was one of them. He was one of the least religious of all of them. But if you have to listen to this speech he gives, you can even tell that he even had God on him. He had more God on him than all these so-called great men of God today. Listen to this. Mr. President, the small progress we have made after 4 or 5 weeks close attendance and continual reasonings with each other, our different sentiments on almost every question, several of the last producing as many nays as ayes, is methinks a melancholy proof of the imperfection of the human understanding. We indeed seem to feel our own want of political wisdom, since we have been running about in search of it. In this situation of this assembly, groping as it were in the dark to find political truth, and scarce able to distinguish it when presented to us, how has it happened, sir, that we may not hitherto once thought to humbly applying to the Father of lights, that's a reference to God, to illuminate our understanding? In the beginning of the contest with Great Britain, he's referencing there back to the Revolution, when we were insensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room. This is in Philadelphia at the Independence Hall. It said during the time when they were about to fight, and they were fighting Great Britain in the war, they had daily prayer in the room, praying for God, praying to God. We had daily prayer in this room for the divine protection. Our prayers, sir, were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us who were engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances of a superintending providence in our favor. To that kind providence, he's talking about divine providence, sovereignty. He's talking about God's hand, God working a miracle in our fight against Great Britain. So many times there was frequent instances where God got involved and made it happen, made things happen for the U.S. To that kind of providence, we owe this happy opportunity of consulting in peace on the means of establishing our future national felicity. And have we not now forgotten that powerful friend? That's another reference to God. Or do we imagine that we no longer need his assistance? Well, you talk about strong here. He's saying have we forgotten God and we don't think we need his assistance anymore. We just think we do it all on our own. He's the reason we beat Great Britain. I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, it is probable that an empire cannot rise without his aid. He's saying God causes empires to rise, and he governs the affairs of men. This is Benjamin Franklin, the deist, saying all this. This is not the big powerful Christian saying this. Even the deists had God on them. Even a man that just had a belief in God, and that was as far as they went, had wisdom of God and even had stronger beliefs in God than most of these doofuses they got today, like Billy Graham and Joel the retard Osteen. He is such a pathetic excuse for anything. Hey, that man ain't no more a preacher than nothing. All he ever does is The Bible says, "Beware that man every man speaks well of, for so did they of the false prophets." Listen to this. We have been assured, sir, in the sacred writings that except the Lord build the house, they'll ever remain to build it. And he just quoted Psalms 127:1. I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring and aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. He compared America to Babel. He said if we don't firmly put our belief and faith in him and start turning to him for this, well, we won't succeed any better than Babel did. We shall be divided by our little partial local interests. Our projects will be confounded, and we ourselves shall become a reproach and a byword down to future ages. And what is worse, mankind may hereafter, from this unfortunate instance, despair of establishing governments by human wisdom, and leave it to chance war and conquest. I therefore beg leave to move that henceforth prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business, and that one or more of the clergy of the city be requested to officiate in that service. He was saying they need to have more prayer in that room. They need to start praying before they start trying to get down to business and start figuring out what needs to be done. They need to start praying to the Lord and start asking Him. And start asking, having preachers come in there and talk to them and everything. This is Benjamin Franklin saying this. This is Benjamin Franklin said all this. And by the way, they moved on it. They seconded the motion, they done it, and they did it. And guess what? About a month or so later, the Constitution was written. That's why they call it the Miracle of Philadelphia. That's why they say that it was a miracle, and they called it a miracle and said that God got involved and got this going. But we want to sit there and say, nah, God had nothing to do with it. God had nothing to do with the founding of the nation, and the Constitution was just some paper that was showed up that we wrote because they were smart people. No, because God got involved. I'm not saying that the Constitution was written by God like the Bible. It was not giving them inspiration of God, but God was involved in giving the wisdom in a way. He didn't write the Constitution itself. It was not written by God. Men could come up with it. But God, they prayed to the Lord to give them wisdom, and God gave it to them, and they were able to write it. That's basically what happened. He did not actually literally write the Constitution like the Bible. It's not God inspired and God breathed like the Bible. I'm just saying that they come about because of these men said he basically rebuked them. It's almost like there's a lot of rebuke in this to these men. Basically saying, y'all turned away from God. You don't think you need Him anymore. You don't pray much anymore about this. You just think we can come in here and figure it out on our own, and we're not doing it because we've turned against God, and now He's confounding us. So then He tells them they need to go back to Him, and they do, and God gives them the wisdom back, and He comes back and He helps them, and then He gives them the Constitution. And I'll just mention this again. And the first 4th of July celebration, they went to church in Philadelphia and had a man of God preach to them. I can just go ahead and tell you right now, there's a whole lot more to this. I'm going to give more later about our Christian heritage. I got more. There's a bunch more. This is nothing. This is just a little bit. I can give you nowhere near all of it. After hearing all this, just hearing what I've told you so far, do you see any separation of church and state anywhere? I don't see any separation of state. I see the exact opposite. I see these men believe strongly that if God wasn't involved in our government, we would surely fall, and they wanted it everywhere, and they put it everywhere. But we don't see that. If people would just go to Washington and go into our founding in those monuments up there, in Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, Washington Monument, the Library of Congress, the Senate, the Capitol and everything, you'll see Bible verses and Christian symbols everywhere. And people want to sit there and say, everybody's there to state, and we can't have God anywhere. They got God up there. It's just crazy. Maybe this will help some of you, because I know nobody's ever heard this at school. I didn't when I was in school. Nobody ever told me any of this stuff. The whole thing they would talk about was these men wanted freedom, and they wanted freedom, and they got tired of being under Britain because Britain was taxing them too much, and they didn't like that, and they rebelled against them, and that's it. Boom, that's done. That's the gist of what you heard. It's just a mess. We have a Christian heritage, not a God-hating deist or atheist heritage. We have a God-fearing Christian heritage.